welcome to Sarah's Stamping Retreat. Today we're going to be exploring different ways to use our embossing folders, and to do that we're going to be using this kit that comes with the new John Next Door magazine box kit. So with this kit you get this die set which has kind of like the poinsettia, the frames and the foliage, and also these little snowflakes. And then you get this, which is obviously going to be our focus today, although we'll be using the dies and stamps a lot too. And it's a really lovely holly 2D embossing folder. It looks like it's about 5 by 5 inches. Then we've got this stamp set, and you've got a really similar theme with the frames, with the foliage and the poinsettia, as well as all these kind of like winter and Christmas sentiments. Then we've got the paper pack, and this will usually come in the middle of your magazine, and you can see we've got all these cut aparts. And the best thing about the magazine is that it is chock full of different ideas from different designers showing you how to use your kit. So there's so many ideas in there, and obviously all different styles because it's different designers doing them. You can see these are really pretty papers with kind of more of a snowy theme to them. And then we're back to the beginning, so you get 2 sheets of each. So let's get on and make some cards. So for my first card, I've chosen to do quite a simple technique with my embossing folder. So I've just put it through my die cutting machine with some vellum. And I chose to do this because I think sometimes vellum's quite overlooked, and it gives such a lovely effect because the embossing folder really kind of pushes through and gives a white tinge on the embossing, so it stands out better, I think, than just embossing a flat cardstock. So since we've used vellum there, I also wanted to use vellum for the flowers on this one. So I'm going to grab all 3 of our poinsettia stamps, and when I'm using vellum to heat emboss, I like to use the embossing buddy a lot because it is a bit more static than normal cardstocks. So then I'm going to stamp these on here. And remember when you're stamping that vellum is a little bit slidey, so you just want to go straight up and straight down, no kind of like rocking or anything. I'm doing 2 of each size. And then I want to use this red glitz embossing powder from Wow. It's got a really nice kind of Christmassy feel to it. And now we've got these fun glitzy flowers, and I'm going to cut those out. So although we're using a very simple technique in this first one with our embossing folder, just using a different medium to usual, I've got loads of fun techniques through the video. So we'll be doing inky embossing, we'll be doing heat embossing with our embossing folders, creating apertures, and I'll give you plenty of hints and tips along the way. My hint for using vellum, by the way, would be to use slightly less pressure if possible. Depends on the sandwich on your machine. But if you can kind of use slightly less pressure, a slightly thinner sandwich than you would with normal paper, that works slightly better because vellum is a little bit delicate, and so it can rip if you put too much pressure on it. And the way I usually do that is to strip out one of my thicker plates and put in a thinner one with a shim if you need it, depending on what machine you're using, just to create a slightly thinner plate. And I'm talking like literally a piece of paper's width or 2 less than you would normally have. So then I'm going to grab some glue dots, and I'm just going to layer up my flowers in pairs. So I'm just going to off center them, and then I'm just going to bend up the petals a little bit just to give them a little bit of dimension. So then I'm going to use some of these Fashion Gold embellishments from Spellbinders. I'm just going to put one in the middle of each flower. So then I've got a sheet of micro glue dots. If you follow my channel, you'll have seen me use these before. I use them a lot for this kind of thing where I'm using like vellum. So I'm going to use this to add my vellum panel on. So you just put it in and smooth it over, and then tiny little glue dots will just adhere onto the back of your panel. And you'll have noticed that my panel tore a bit as I pulled it off the sheet, but because it tore along the lines of the pattern, as I patched the pieces back in, you can't actually tell. So I should have mentioned that for this card I've got a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch green card blank, and then I've got a gold mat that is 5 by 3 3/4 inches. Then my green mat is 1/4 inch smaller than that, and my vellum piece is about 1/8 inch smaller than that. So I'm just layering those up on the front of my card. So then I've got a couple of strips of cardstock, one green and one gold, and they're both the same width as this green piece here, and the green one is 1.5 inches wide and the gold one is 1 3/4 inches wide. And then I'm going to use this Merry Christmas sentiment. I'm going to heat emboss that on there in gold. So I've got my polished gold superfine embossing powder from Wow. And then I'm going to just glue that onto my gold piece. So I'm going to glue that onto my card. And then I'm going to add on my flowers. And then I've just die cut a couple of these little leaves as well. So there's that first card finished, and I really like that embossed panel. So for our next card, we're going to create an arch shaped card. So I've used these Essential Arches dies from Spellbinders. And I've used this largest one to make a card blank from green cardstock. And the way I've done that is to cut a card that's big enough to fit that, and then I've just overlaid this edge so that the fold goes slightly within it, so it doesn't cut the fold. Then I've used that same one to cut out this white piece. Then I've used this one, then skipped 2 and used the next one to create this green, and then the 2 in between those I've used to create the gold frame. I really enjoy using nesting dies for that exact reason. You can create card blanks, mats of different sizes, frames, and they obviously all fit together. So for this one, we're going to create an inky embossed panel, but we're going to do it on the deboss side rather than the emboss side. So I'm going to ink up my brayer, and usually when we do inky embossing, we do it on the front of the embossing folder, which is this piece that's navy blue, but this time we're going to do it on the back because I want it to be the deboss. So I'm going to lightly just ink that up, and I'm going nice and lightly because I don't want too much in between the leaves. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and I'm going to add it in here, and then I'm going to pop it through my die cutting machine. In fact, what I might do is actually put it in sideways, because then I can get more of the image covered and it doesn't really matter which way around the pattern goes. So then we can open that up and we've got this gorgeous deboss pattern. So then the only parts that didn't cover were this top and this bottom. That's fine because I've got bits that are going to cover those bits up anyway, so I'm not too worried about that. So let's glue the 2 frames together. So then I'm going to glue this onto my card front, and I'm going to glue the frame on top of it. And particularly when I'm gluing embossed panels, I do like to use a block just to hold that down and make sure it's properly glued, because obviously you've got less flat area to work with. So then I've die cut some of these flowers, and the die cuts 3 flowers at a time, 1 big one and 2 small ones. And I'm just bending up those edges a little bit, the petals, and then gluing them, but I'm going to offset them while I glue them to make a fuller looking flower. And I've done the same with this bigger one and this other smaller one as well. And then I'm going to add some of these gold embellishments in the middle. And then I've die cut this twice. So one of them I've kept like this. The other one I've cut these bits off the sides. And then I've got these berries which I'm just going to add onto the middle of the one that I've kept together. So then I can add those onto my card. So then I'm going to use this Season's Greeting stamp for this one, and I'm going to heat emboss it in gold. So I'm going to glue my sentiment onto a piece of gold cardstock. It's about 1/8 of an inch bigger than it. And then I'm going to glue on these pieces. And all these die cut pieces kind of cover up that little bit of the panel that didn't get embossed. And then this middle one, I'm just going to pop up on a foam pad, just to give that a bit of dimension. And then I'm going to pop this sentiment up on foam pads as well. So then to finish up, I'm just going to add some little gems onto these berries at the top, just to give them a bit of dimension and shine. So then there's that card. So then for my third card, I have cut a piece of cardstock, and this is quite a thick cardstock. It's from some packaging, and I've cut that to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches, and I've cut 2 of these. So the idea of doing 2 is that 2 is roughly similar to the thinnest of the plates that I use for embossing in my embossing machine. So these will replace that plate. So I've got 2 pieces. So I've cut an oval in one, and I've done that using this largest oval die from in here. And then so that we get them in the same place, because obviously the die can't cut through 2 pieces of really thick board like this, I'm just going to draw around that, and then I'm going to place this around there so that I know exactly where to die cut the oval in this one, because we're going to create a shim, and the oval you need to place in the center because we're looking to use this as kind of mask for our embossing folder. So once we've cut these out, then when we put it through with our embossing folder, we'll end up with a nice flat panel in the middle. So my tape's ripping the cardstock a little bit as it comes off, but that's fine, it's not a problem. We're not worried about the look of this. So we're going to use this together because I want a flat piece in the middle of our embossed panel, but you could also glue this to the other oval and use it in the same way that we're going to use these to create an embossed oval instead of the oval being the aperture. I think that'll make more sense once I've done this. So I'm going to glue these 2 pieces together. So for this card, I've got a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch green card blank. Then I've got this piece of gold cardstock that is 3 3/4 by 5 inches, and this piece is about 1/8 of an inch smaller than that. So I'm going to grab my embossing folder, then I'm going to temporarily tape this onto the back of it, and then I'm going to put this inside, but I want to make sure that it's centered on that panel because I want this oval to be in the middle of this green piece. So then I'm going to emboss it like this, but like I say, I'm going to take out my finished shim, and this is going to act instead of my finished shim. So now you can see we've got this embossed panel, but it's completely flat in the middle. So then I'm going to use this oval stamp with Love at Christmas. I'm going to heat emboss that into that flat place. And I'm going to use gold embossing powder. And then I've used both of the oval dies to cut out this frame, and I'm going to pop that around it. Then I've got a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch card blank, and then a 3 3/4 by 5 inch piece of gold cardstock. And I'm going to add my embossed panel onto that gold cardstock. And then I can add that to the front of my card. So then I'm just going to add some red gems to these berries. And then I'm just going to decorate it with these poinsettia and leaves that I've just made in the same way I did the ones in the last card, just by layering up those die cuts. And then I'm just going to use a foam pad to add on this biggest one. So then we've got that really lovely card. So then for my fourth card, I'm going to use a 5 by 5 inch green card blank, and I've embossed this 4 3/4 inch square piece of cardstock, white cardstock, with our embossing folder. I'm just going to use my carrying brush markers just to colour that. So I've got ocean teal and fire red, and I'm literally just going to colour in the pieces on our embossing folder. So then there's that finished coloured panel. So I'm going to add that onto my card front. I really love colouring embossing folders because obviously it's naturally 3D. I've only added flat colour to this. I've not added any shading or anything, but obviously that actual texture of the embossing folder adds a lot to it. It gives that kind of no line colouring effect. So then I've got all these poinsettia made up, and I've got this 4 inch green circular frame that I've created, and I'm going to stick them all onto here. So then I'm going to heat emboss the Season's Greeting sentiment onto this circle. So I've die cut this circle that's about 2 inches. So then I'm going to add some foam pads to the back of my wreath. And then I'm also going to add some foam pads to the back of my sentiment. And then we've got this card. So for this final technique, I'm going to be using some embossing ink with my embossing folder. So then I'm going to use that ink to ink up my brayer. And we're going to do this in quite a similar way to the way we did our first inky technique, but this time I want the embossed image side to be inked, not the debossed side. So I'm going to just ink up this front plate in just the same way we did with the other ink on the other card. And so then I'm going to pop that onto there. I'm going to fold it over once I get to my die cutting machine, and I'm going to emboss that image. So then you can see we've got that nice embossed image with the embossing ink transferred. And I want to use my gold embossing powder to cover that. And then how pretty is that? So I'm going to make a circular card for this. So I've got 2 green 5 inch circles. This gold one is about 4.5 inches, and then this one that we've just done is around about 4 1/4 inches. So I'm going to create a card blank from these green 5 inch circles. So I'm going to pop this in and trim 1/2 inch off one side. Then I'm going to pop it in, and I'm going to make sure that I line this line here up parallel at the bottom, and I'm going to score about 1/2 inch from the top. So then I'm going to add glue above this line, and then I'm going to add on the other circle. So then I'm going to glue on my mats. Now I can glue that onto my card blank. So then I'm going to use the Merry Christmas sentiment and I'm going to add that in here. So then I'm going to add some foam pads behind my sentiment. And then I'm just going to add on these little flowers. I think I might actually just pop these up on foam pads. And then there's that final card finished. So now we've got all 5 of today's cards. I really hope you enjoyed creating them with me and got some different ideas for using your embossing folders. If you enjoyed today's video, I'd really appreciate you clicking like below, and you can also press subscribe if you'd like to see future videos. If you press the bell button and select all, then YouTube will also notify you when I've got a new video available. All of the products that I've used for today's cards are listed in the description below, and there's also a link there to my blog where you can find a picture supply list if that helps you find what you're looking for. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope to see you again soon.